Okay, good morning again, everybody. Thank you all once again for attending and registering for the webinar this morning. I hope you've all had a good week where we've all survived. Good news. So I will get started without further ado. So what we're talking about today, we're talking about the pipeline revenue gap for you guys out there. We've got a live Q&A and a huge thank you to Louise for coming on the webinar this morning. So duration of the webinar, 30 to 40 minutes this morning. I'd love to get you guys involved. So we've got some interactive polls so you can let me know your opinions on what's going on at the moment. And as well, we've also got a short video too. Please do get involved, ask the questions to Lou and myself, of course, as well. If you've got any questions, do please get involved. How you do that, we'll just go through a quick agenda and I'll then show you how you can ask your questions. We've got a short video to start with. We've got the live Q&A with Louise, and then we've got a presentation on the auction market in post-lockdown too. So yeah, very quick house rules. All webinar attendees are muted just to avoid any background noise, any distractions. Please use the questions option on the GoToWebinar control panel. I will try and answer all questions at the end if I don't answer them during the webinar. If you do ask a question, just a quick note that if you do and you do click on leave the webinar, I can't answer the question and it will appear that I'm being rude in not answering your question. I'm not like that. I'll answer every question that's posed. If you do want to ask any questions, if you just click on the orange arrow, which you then expand the button to open up your control panel, you'll be able to ask the questions. So, what a treat on a Friday. We've got a short video to start with. So, here we go. Okay, a huge thank you to Chrissy in the SDL Marketing team for sending that across to us. So huge thank you to Chrissy for sending that across. Some really interesting and rather high fees in there, by the way. I noticed there was an over £3,500 fee in the WS area of the Midlands. That's pretty impressive, by the way. Okay, so we're firing away. So don't worry, Lou, I'm not going to go all Dominic Cummings. I'm not going to be like Beth Rigby at Sky News. These questions won't be too hard. I do promise that. So the first question will be to you. Okay. Our industry is still feeling an amount of uncertainty with agents juggling and increasing inquiries. I'm sure you guys in the room are feeling that too. There's obviously the limbo of do I, don't I, and furlough staff to deal with the new demand, of course, sorry. Do you think it will last? And secondly, what have you seen at SDL Auctions in the last 2 weeks? And are you finding that upward trend in buyer inquiries too?
I think, definitely we've been a little protected than the normal private treaty marketplace in this period of time. But we do follow the trends, and because a lot of our work comes from our estate agency partners as well. So I think we've definitely seen an uplift since estate agents have started to go back to work. It wasn't quite the, you know, the mass sort of everybody's back that perhaps some people expected, because I think there's huge pressures on estate agents to do it the right way. There's a huge pressure on their P&Ls on a branch level, whether they're a small independent or a corporate, to say, do you unlock all your furloughed staff straight away when you haven't got income coming in necessarily? So I think it will just build personally from that side of things. And I think naturally, the more visual we are in the marketplace, the more unlocked our communities feel. Then I think people will start to sort of get back to a new normal. So I think it will last. I don't think it will be a massive flood of a tap. God, I'm really going for my plumbing analogies at the moment, aren't I? But I mean, I think in what we've seen in the last couple of weeks, we had a large national property auction yesterday, which we'll talk about later. That, you know, that by the very nature, we had over 125 lots in that one sale event. Yet obviously that created a hell of a lot of buyer noise. And, you know, I think, you know, I'm going to steal some of the stats, but, you know, we had 22,000 legal pack downloads, you know, inquiries. It's massive. So in that sort of tease of activity, it's really strong. People are still looking for opportunities to buy. An auction will always be that attractive place that says there's a reason somebody's selling at auction. What could be in it? There's always got to be something in it for any purchaser to buy, whether an owner occupier or an investor. And my goodness, there was such a range of properties that we had. There would be something for most buyers. There really would. So
yeah, interesting stuff. So I mean, on the staffing side, I mean, what if you? And again, you know, I get asked it all the time. You know, agents are like to compare, and I'll go, well, I know you deal with X and Y down the road. I mean, staffing levels for you guys, is it broadly stayed the same?
We put a lot more people on furlough, and then because we were busier than perhaps even we anticipated, we released, you know, a certain part of our sort of admin community just to deal with the level of inquiries. You know, our phone calls, you know, it was phenomenal, really. Now, we were lucky. We had great cloud-based telephone systems. Everybody was able to be pretty much immediately. You know, I remember that Friday on the 23rd, I think I'd started working from home a few days prior to that, you know, and everybody, you know, within 24 hours was working from home. And, you know, we can still track all those calls. So we brought a number of the admin people back. There's still a few people that, you know, we're not doing the same levels of business as we were. You know, we're not having physical room sales. And obviously our business development community, you know, are not going out and visiting their estate agents or our corporate clients. You know, yes, we are doing things, you know, this way. We're using Zoom, we're using Microsoft Teams, we're using all number of new technologies to meet our customers. And as you say, but you know, we can see already there's a pressure for us to sort of think about unlocking more, but you know, you don't want to do that just as the same as any other business.
Yeah.
You know, with confidence that the income is going to come into the business. As I say, we're in a fortunate place. We're part of a larger group as well, that just, you know, supports us trying to get back to normal as quickly as possible, and us taking stance really early on to say, what can we do to help our estate agency partners, the vendors that they have, our direct vendors who give us instructions, because not everybody can wait. Not everybody can press the big pause button. Yeah,
absolutely. That's interesting, as you say, you know, it's to see, you know, the trend of what's going on up and down the country. I mean, I was speaking with an agent in Wales yet in the course. Don't know what's happening. You know, they haven't moved yet. You know, really interesting. Okay, so on to my second question. So I'm sure you guys in the room, Lou, I know you would have seen it as well. There's a lot of commentary, you know, out there about the bottleneck of sales pipeline, meaning SSTC to completion could take up to 4 months. Outrageous. So what are you hearing from the agents? You know, you guys deal with it. Are they nervous about that? You know, I'm sure there would be. Certainly, I would be as an agent. I mean, what are the stories? What are you hearing out there?
I think it's really interesting because this is for me a bit of a hot topic anyway, because I don't think that's much news really, because I think the private treaty process, you know, has stalled sales for so long now. It's not untypical for you know, I think there were stats last year about, you know, it taking on average from listing to sale of 6 months and 24 days. So, you know, if you look at a typical marketplace in March, you might have, and this is sort of in a private treaty world, it typically takes 57 days to sell, you know, and that's for it to agree an offer basically, or to sell subject to contract. In October, it's normally about 79 days. And that's just that seasonality of, you know, this is a great time to sell your property. March to July is normally the hottest times for a estate agency. So if you take that, you know, there's also stats that says, you know, you could take anything from 3 to 6 weeks to get a mortgage offer. From solicitors and conveyancing perspective, you know, sometimes that can take 6 weeks for those searches being ordered to being able to exchange. So you can see really quickly that 4 months seems, you know what, sometimes you'll be lucky to get it done in 4 months. And that's where auctions is, for me, that bridges that gap, not just for vendors, but for our estate agency partners today, because it's not untypical. You know, it really isn't. You know, with the best will in the world, you can go as a vendor, and I could turn around and go into an estate agency tomorrow and say, "Can you sell my property this month?" You know, and they'd say yes. You know, and with the best spirit, they can. Yeah. But it you know what? It could also fall off a cliff as well, because there's no commitment in that private treaty process, the way we run it in England and Wales mostly, that says, you know what, I can go through that process, and a week before I'm due to exchange, that might have taken 4 months, you know, I can pull out. I can take that vendor right back to where they started. And I can take that estate agent who has done a huge amount of work, you know, and guess what? Guess who gets the blame? It's the estate agent, you know. It won't be the solicitor, it won't be the buyer changing their mind, it won't be, you know. That's why I have, you know, a genuine affection for the hard job it is to be an estate agent in the UK. You know, in other countries of the world, they don't do all of that for maybe less than 1%. They do all that for 5%, you know, and more in lots of cases, you know, where there's structures where buyers pay 3%, sellers pay 3%, you know. So there's a huge amount of work that our estate agents can do, and they won't ever get paid on it. And at best, they might have to wait 4 to 6 months. So, you know, I think it's going to be one of the things that stops estate agencies unlocking themselves quicker, because to take on the burden of their staff costs without, you know, they can have their best month, you know, they can have their best month, and they're not going to see any cash for at least 3 or 4 months, you know, and that's hard.
Yeah,
you know, it's an environment, obviously.
So you know, I love to get you guys involved, of course. So we've got our first poll of the day. So I'm asking you guys to get your crystal ball out a little bit here. So what do you think the new average time will be from offer to completion, or STC to completion in the next 6 months? Do you think it'll be less than 10 weeks, 10 to 12 weeks, 14 to 16 weeks, over 6 or over 20 weeks? That'd be scary, wouldn't it? And again, for you guys that have been on the brief market webinars with myself before, you know, it was interesting. You know, we had the Tony Piccirillo from AV Rillo talking about this. You know, it's you know, there's going to be a real issue in, you know, dealing with this absolute bottleneck of what your sales pipeline is and getting that through. I was giving another 5 or 10 seconds so you guys who haven't voted yet can vote. So what do you think the new average time will be from offer to completion in the next 6 months? I'll give that 2 seconds there. Okay, so interesting. 67% of the room, 14 to 16 weeks. 33% over 16 weeks. So again, it's an incredible amount of time. It really, really is. So thank you to you guys for voting there. Okay, so Lou, can you give me some examples of how having an auction arm could benefit agent? Obviously, bearing in mind, we've just spoken about the incoming revenue could be some weeks or maybe months away. And secondly, what would your top 3 thoughts be if you were an agent or had not engaged, in thinking about auctions before?
I think the first point to make is, I think reputationally, I know far more brilliant estate agents who do what's right for their customers than not. And that's the really important piece, is that auctions isn't for everybody. And it won't be the right thing for all of your vendors, but it's probably more suitable for more than you think. And that's what, if we played out what we see typically happening, some people might make different choices. We've all had vendors who've been on the, for sale for 6 months, and they end up taking an offer that they were not prepared to take, but there's 6 months down the road. So, it's about really understanding a vendor's motivation, and that's the first point. So, genuinely there may be clients out there for those estate agents that need a result quicker than, than the best will of maybe 3 months. They need, and it might be because they need that financially, or it might be because they like it. So it's, it might be because it's not that important, or it might be because they're a distressed seller. I think the important point is that that's never about the property. It's always about the circumstance of the vendor. So first off is for you to offer that fully rounded service to your vendors, this may genuinely be something that more of them are interested in than you perhaps talk about. And so it's worth talking to your customers at market appraisal about whether this is suitable for them. And that really quickly. In the old days of an estate agency, anybody who had that old school training, like I may have done, of your pricing triangle, in that world is, if they're sitting with some hope value in their property, or sitting in the middle band, it won't be for them. But if they're really motivated and really realistic on the price, then it's worth the conversation. It's how you position it. It isn't about, as I say, it is not about the property. It is about that motivated vendor and a reason for somebody to buy. When I started in the auctions business 3 or 4 years back now, and under some great, great mentors at the time, and I still work really closely with Andy Parker today. So I remember him saying it's all about who's going to buy it and why. It's always about thinking about that question of who's going to buy it and why. And people are very good at convincing themselves, when you've got more transparent way of working, that there's comfort in that. So when I put in, if you take the extreme of a best and finals in an estate agency, nobody knows what that other potential buyer is bidding on. Nobody can see that. Nobody, and there's always a bit of cloak and dagger about if the agent told them something that they haven't told me. And, the person who wins it thinks, damn, I maybe paid 10 grand more than I needed to, or whatever. Whereas when we take somebody down an auction route, it is as transparent as it can be. Whether you do it online or in a bidding live environment like we had yesterday, you can see we've got bidder 1, bidder 2, bidder 3, whether it's on the phone, whether it's on proxy, whether it's, an internet bidder. I will feel much more comfortable paying £300,000 for that house, knowing, David, that you're going to pay 298. It's that comfort. And that's where we do see that competitive bidding starts to build. And we'll both have examples of where a private treaty sale will have achieved more, or an auction property will have achieved more. And things generally find their value. in that moment in that marketplace. You know, I'd still say to somebody that's, you know, they say, you know, we've all, honestly, on valuations, you go, well, I'm not really desperate to sell. Well, you know what? Don't sell it now, because the only way your price is going to go if you're not desperate and you've got true hope value in it is down. So when you're truly motivated, then come and talk to me. Now, we also know that there's so many competitors out there in the estate agency market that overprice. And that is how they win instructions. And you know what, with the best will in the world, I'm not saying that if I was doing that today, I wouldn't do that. Because, you know, it's about taking those vendors on a journey, you know, and sometimes it can be a bit of a journey of disappointment when they think they're, you know, my kitchen's nicer than theirs, so it's worth more. And, you know, honestly, it's amazing what drives people to their valuations of their houses. And so it's about taking them on a journey of what's realistic. And we can do that much more effectively at auction in that transparent way. So again, it's about thinking about it for you as an estate agent that says you can have your best day ever, you know, and sell that property because it's so sellable and it's priced really realistically, and you get a sale in 24 hours, and you know, that's great. And you can do all of that work. You can still get down the road, at least 12 weeks down the road, and somebody changes their mind. There's no consequence. And so I call it hurt money. You know, that's, you know, it sounds quite harsh, but, you know, we tie buyers and sellers into the process. You know, there is hurt money. There are consequences, whether you've exchanged on the hammer or it's a conditional sale. It doesn't matter. There's something to lose. And that's why we don't have the same fall through rate. It's not because we're particularly clever, it's because of the way we manage our sales. And some people need that. And some estate agents, it would be the best way to secure a sale, not only for your vendors, but for your business too. Because the way we structure that is that because we get those fees on offer, if you like, if it's a conditional sale, they take a non-refundable reservation fee or part deposit, or if it's on exchange, we get that money straight away and we pay that within 7 days. And there's nothing you can do in a sales estate agency business that's going to generate that cash that quickly, unless perhaps people are paying for marketing tax. And so it really is a way of turning that tap on of income much quicker and still having the confidence that you're delivering a great service to your vendors and buyers, because it protects the buyers too. You know, it's that it stops gazumping as well as gazundering.
Yeah,
that's it, really.
Perfect. So this is a very pokey question. I'm sorry about this. I do feel a little bit like the mainstream media this week. Isn't auctions only for agents in the north of England with average fees lower than £1,500? Sorry about that one.
It's, you know what, it's not that controversial. Most of the, you know, the sort of estate agency auction providers came out of the northeast in the first place. Some of our competitors, and that, by the very nature of that, the property prices are lower. And you know, we will typically work on anything from 3 to 4% in that marketplace. And so they're bigger fees than, you know, an estate agent would get. You know, we sold properties and land and all sorts yesterday for, God, there were 3 flats in Skegness that went from, one was 14 grand, one was 15.5, and one was 14.5 or something like that, in Skeggy. And you know, if you were working on 1.5%, you're still, it's not worth getting out of bed for most estate agents to do that. You know, the sales progression would cost you that alone, yet alone your contributions to your right move costs. So you know what, it does help drive average fees up, most certainly. But you know, we sold a property for one of our countrywide branches yesterday, and they got a £9,000 fee, and that was up north. You know, it was wow. Outside York. So no, it's not just for that. I can, you know, show you an awful lot of examples where it's not just for the northern markets. It's not for every market though too. You know, that's the other thing to do, but it is for every potential vendor, and it will have greater success rates depending on, you know, the level of chimney pots, the level of activity and investment in that marketplace and everything. There's so many different factors that affect it, but it's certainly not just for the north. Most definitely not. Super
stuff. That busts that myth. Lovely. So, okay, another question for you guys in the room. Has your business ever sold a property at auction, either with SDL or another provider? A nice simple yes or no for a Friday morning. So has your business ever sold a property at auction, either with SDL or any other providers? Okay. Interesting so far. Again, if you've not voted yet, please get involved. I won't charge you, promise. Give another 10 seconds. So has your business ever sold a property at auction? I'm quite surprised by this, actually, Louise. Okay. 25% yes, 75% no. Quite interesting. Okay. Right, we will crack on. So, am I likely to receive a lower offer for a property? Okay. Auction route. So let's say I decide to sell my house and go, oh, do you know what, actually, I need to move. Let's say I want to buy countryside. It's a risk involved. It sounds a bit risky to me. You know, if I'm a seller, it's a risk involved. You know, I've got to be thinking of, you know, am I doing the right thing here? So it's a risk.
I think there's the first thing to know is that the property will never sell for less than the reserve that you put on it as the seller. So, so there is not a risk that it will sell for anything less than you agree that reserve to be. So even in when, you know, if there's bidding up to it and anything, whatever happens, unless it hits the reserve, it won't sell. Now the contracts you sign say that if it hits the reserve, it will sell. So the risk is it doesn't achieve much more than your reserve. So that's where the risk is. And where the balance that we work with within auctions is to get that balance right, because very naturally, the lower the reserve, the more people we can attract. And we can create that alchemy in auctions of that competitive bidding. So if we're you know, we guide something typically 10% less than the reserve. So again, if I'm working on my nice easy maths, if I'm working on my reserve is £100,000, I will start guiding that at £90,000. So we will attract more people than potentially if you are putting it on the market in a private treaty world that you put it on 110 grand. And the idea being that, you know, in private treaty you come down to that 100 grand, and in auctions you come up to it. But there or thereabouts it finds its level. Now, what I would say is if we've got somebody who's really motivated and can take an element of risk, if you reserve your property at £90,000 and we can guide it at 81, then you suddenly go, oh, you are attracting even more people. Yeah. And then you get them even more people into a competitive bidding. And essentially, it's the same thing as more views, more offers, more sales. So, you know, that's where the risk element comes in. But that's also our job to say to the vendors and to talk to our partners, vendors on their behalf to say, I think unless you can come down on that reserve, it won't be suitable. So I think there's people should have a lot of confidence is that I don't want us or any of our partners to take on stock that we don't feel that we're going to sell. We may sometimes take something on because that's part of taking the vendor on a more realistic journey. That said, let's flush out the offers, because when suddenly somebody has a bag of cash offered to them, it's very different to say, listen, if I could exchange contracts today, would you take 85? They then might take that call. And that's what we try and flush out. And that's the difference. So, you know, as I say, we've got examples where we've taken stuff far higher, and we've got examples where it's just scraped the reserve, you know, and then we will have had examples yesterday that it was just under the reserve. But we'll tie up a couple of post sales today, you know, even last night, because you go to the vendor and go, okay, maybe your reserve was 152, you know, we've got an offer of 150. you want to take it or not? And you know what? Nicely, it is not for us to pressure those decisions. If it's somebody's idea, then that's fine. If not, then it's about how we look at how we market that property together with the partner estate agent. So again, it's not for everybody. So if you're sitting there with a property that every day is maybe worth 210, and you've got a mortgage of £200,000 on it, and you can't go lower than that, it's probably not worth setting a reserve of £200,000 and sending it into auction, because it won't be any different than you guys in an estate agency trying to do a deal. So there's got to be something. There's always got to be something in it. But ultimately, there's not a risk of it selling for less than a reserve.
I feel a bit happier now if I was a potential seller. I'm not going to lie. Thank you. Okay, so on to yesterday. I know you just mentioned it just now. How did it go yesterday, and what types of properties did you sell? This is news hot off the press.
Yeah, we had a really good sale day, honestly. Well, there was a personal picture that Andy Parker, who's our MD and auctioneer, sent me at the end of the day with his head in his hands like that. It was a marathon, it really was. Started at 10:30. I think they had a break at lot 59, which was about 10 to 2. Started again at 3 o'clock, and was still going at 5:30 last night. So wow. It was an epic day. It was an epic day. He had a bit more help than just his wife Rachel this time, because obviously we were allowed a couple of extra people in the office to help, all be it socially distanced. And again, it's we're really proud of our new normal. It's business as unusual to start with, but it has become our new normal. We had, I think, one day last week we had over 100 bids registered in one day, which was completely unprecedented. It was crazy. The phones were going nuts. They really were. That's when we did take a few people off furlough the week before, just to cope with the phone inquiries, really. And there were still people, once it started, were taking them through their AML checks so we could get them ready to bid. So it was fraught but exciting. And to keep the energy going that long is something quite exceptional. And again, we had, I think the initial stats was about an 84% sale rate on yesterday alone, which is pretty exceptional, knowing that there'll be a few more post sales tied up as well. And again, the sort of properties, gosh, there was the property I talked about in York was it was a £430,000 house. I mentioned the flats in Skeggy, that went. Everything from a storage pod to honestly, there was a mixed use plot in Mablethorpe with, that's interesting. It was guided, I forget if I've made up the figures, it was there or thereabouts. I think it was guided at 66,000 or something, and it was a mixed use in Mablethorpe. And it had an income already of, I think, over 10,000, close to 11,000 of a rental income. I think it sold for late 70s, so that's the thing. If you're looking from an investment point of view, there are massive opportunities out there that really strong yields available. And actually, if you're looking for something to develop or some hope value in something, there were some fascinating plots, some with planning, some just hope. There was a lovely parcel of land not far from where I live, which I thought it would be a nice place to stick a log cabin in the woods, and but it got to 50 grand, so it was over my price range anyway. But I've got to say, there was something for everyone. There really was. So there would have been something if I was looking for a bungalow for my mum to live in, through to a couple of flats to invest in. Yeah. Not a typical property, I will say. But, it was
it's great. There's a range, isn't there? I mean, I love the in Skeggy for 14 grand.
No, and there was a property in Cornwall, in Liskeard, everything from it was from the each end of the country. So for us, it was truly national in the reach. It's something we're hoping to build on, capitalise on even more. So
good stuff. Yeah, I did see the article this morning, and again, I know Andrew, bless him, got involved with that as well. About the fact that your business, is evolving extremely fast, and you're having extreme success, with auctions in the room, so to speak. And interesting, of course, that in again, who would have thought this, 3 months ago? Let's be honest.
No, and we also genuinely don't know at what point that that traditional ballroom auction comes back to being. I think it's having the foundations of a really transparent business. With we're automating a system every day. There seems to be another way of improving our processes and making it slicker and easier for people to do it that way, because we don't know. We could sort of, people initially thought, oh, maybe you'll be able to do it in September. I think to get a crowd of people together, it's looking likely for me that I might only have 10 people at the wedding in September. Never mind being able to hold an auction. It's all up for we don't know yet, do we? We really don't.
It is all the unknown. You're absolutely right. So we know, obviously, from the video that we showed at the top of the presentation today, that the minimum fee for an agent is around £2.5 grand. I'm not sure what the average fee is for your agents across the UK. And so if I'm an agent today, are there any setup fees for an agent if they want to consider this? And thirdly, I do apologise, are there any sellers' fees too?
Right. So typically, when we say the minimum of £2,500, that's because we'll say it's basically a minimum of £5,000 plus VAT is the buyer fee, a non-refundable reservation fee, and so that's what we typically see. An average fee of just under 7,000. That's inclusive of that. So our partners see, just shy of 3,000 as an average fee, because obviously we do a lot down south, and we do a lot that's of higher than 125 grand value. So it's a blend of those fees really. The way we work, for us, I am very respectful that it takes an element of trust for an estate agent to kind of give over their gold dust. It's their clients. They've recruited, they build up that market share. They market within their local world to build those opportunities to sell houses. So, for me, if I haven't got a proposition that says to them, look, it should be easy for you to say yes to this, not because it's too good to be true, but actually, I know that if we get this right, it can be really successful. So give us the opportunity. So we don't charge any fees to do this at all. It does require an investment from us because, and that's not people or business development investment or what we call a customer acquisition cost, but there's a real cost because we'll set up a microsite, a white labeled microsite. We'll produce marketing material. We'll train their staff. There's everything that we can do to help drive that knowledge, because it's a big education piece. It's a big education piece initially for the estate agents and then their clients too, because there is a level of myths that need to be busted about auction properties, because we're all, you'd expect an auction property to look like this, and so our education process is about spreading that word really, and being a bit evangelical about the fact that it could be for more people. It's only for about 2% of property transactions today, and I have some ambition that it could certainly be for 10%. But it ain't going to be 50%. It's also about how realistic this can be. So there are no fees to set this up. I think the other side of that is that once you get an estate agent getting their first fee, it starts to become something that's it builds on itself very naturally. And then they nicely want to engage in more of the things that we can do to help market it. But it's really important for me that it's a training and education that says, look, there's a really good reason you should do this. in an estate agent. And it goes back to the sort of the general positioning of this, is that that revenue gap that people see, you know, we're not in a position where you can just concentrate on one thing as an estate agent to turn a successful business. You know, your client will have more than one thing they need to get done in their house sale or house let. So it's our job to be the ones that can provide that trusted advice. And if that's conveyancing, or if that's mortgage advice, or if that's offering an auction service, or, you know, a survey, you know, that's going to tell them more than about their property than the lender's valuation survey, then I really do believe that there's a huge amount of income leakage that happens in an estate agent. So when you start to train in those other ancillary services, you know, that says your buyer needs all those things, just as, you know, they need, you know, new Sky TV or media, they do need, you know, their energy switching, they do need to move house, they do need to physically do all those things. At the very least, you can apply your relationships with trusted providers that says, you know what, I've won your business, you trust me as your estate agent, let me recommend the right people to do that job. And if you can do it in a white labeled environment, like the way we do it with auctions, that says, we're your auction department, you just don't have to pay our salaries. You know, that's that. I want them to think that our auction experts team work for them. You know, they don't work for me, they work for our partners. You know, they don't work, that's what they're there to do, to make them look good and to get them sales and to increase their income. And when we get that relationship right, it's a joyful thing, you know, because everybody wins. It really is. It's
and let's be honest, where we're at the moment, as we know, you know, it has to be a consideration. You know, that's my own personal opinion. You know, I've dealt with agents for many, many years, but you know, it has to be a consideration. Just as you say, you know, it's going to be this absolute, you know, wide open space, unfortunately, where revenue is just going to be, you know, on the floor. So, okay, I'm a little conscious on time. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to flick onto some of the headlines from yesterday. Over 20,000 legal documents, over 100 lots.
Around that, it's mad.
14 million raised. There we go.
Yeah.
Over 1,500 watched live, 755 registered bidders. I mean, again, there's some wild figures in there. It's great. It really, really is. I mean, on that, I mean, how did that compare to? I know where you and Andrew did the May auction. Was that a lot busier? I mean, you've got 755 bidders there. Of course, it will depend on how many lots you have. But have you found that, you know, that was a lot busier than your May one?
So you mean April, but that's fine. But so it's interesting.
I apologise. Sorry, I'm getting my months mixed up. It's been a long few weeks.
That was our third national virtual property auction. So we did one at the end of March. Now, again, that was a bit weird because it's not representative, because of course we were unlocked a big chunk of March. As the stats will prove in the estate agency market, the transaction numbers didn't really fall significantly until April. Compared to April, it was a bit stronger than April. There were more bidders, there were more, you know, there were more lots. So it's got better. And again, I think, it's not comparative, because April's the only true bubble that's been complete lockdown. No viewings, nothing. Whereas we did start to do viewings, and we got some better technology in our viewings for this May's auction as well. So we're using the Matterport's, technology to provide those brilliant viewings, because it does make it real. And again, I know the things that's flushed out of the estate agency market. We're qualifying buyers far more than the tire kickers on a normal viewing, because normally, whereas now it's, listen, you've got to be really serious for us to, take the leap of doing a physical viewing. I think, they've been each different months, so I think we'll probably only see a comparison when we look at June. May and June will be more similar. But it was a better overall result but probably not surprising considering we were a little bit unleashed.
Yeah, I'm going to say we've released the beast of the property market, haven't we? Okay, so we're at nearly 10 to the hour. Well, yeah, here we are now. So I'm just going to very quickly just go quick through the slides, which has been really kindly provided by Chrissy at SDL. I'm going to send the slides out, obviously, to all the attendees, and if you've got any colleagues that have registered and couldn't attend, of course, they'll get the email as well. So, but I want it really to be, more of a conversational piece today between everybody. So, again, a lot of this is, of course, is what Lou's spoken about. For me, absolutely reducing the fall throughs, get paid quicker, an increase in the minimum fee. These are absolutely the challenges you guys have got out there, the room. And again, it's my own personal opinion. I will say that, why wouldn't you consider this? Okay, so just going to flick on to the next slide here. There we go. Again, Lou's done this fantastically, busting the myths of, what auction properties are. It's not only for the low end properties, and there are absolutely big fees to be had. We've gone through, of course, the commission elements of that. And again, you'll know from my accent, I work in the Midlands. I've worked with a lot of estate agents in the past who have gone down this route, and again, it is extremely lucrative. And again, if we just look at the centre element there of payment received within 7 days, that has to be a consideration for you guys to look at. We've got a couple of great case studies. Obviously, Louise has very kindly talked about some case studies. Again, we've got one on the screen here. This is my local hometown where I grew up in Shirley. Again, we've got a probate of 2 sisters who are in dispute here. But again, I know the road extremely well there. Guide price there of 235, reserve of 250, sold, wow, 278, fantastic. I don't think the sisters would have been quarrelling after that one. Another one here in Coventry, reserve of 425, went for 430. Great looking property, that one there. Okay, so this is Lou's details. Please get involved with that if you can. I'll send out the slides. But last of all, I'm just going to close up before we've got our coming next with the last poll of the day. Would you like Louise and the team to contact your business for a free consultation again? And if you've not looked at this before, obviously there were some elements of people in the room of your businesses, you've not done this before. If you want Louise and the team to contact you just for a free consultation, please get involved. A quick yes or no answer to that one. I'll send out the slides, of course, and some touch points on the SDL website so you can get in contact with the team. And of course, I will give you Louise's direct contact details as well. I'll just give you another 10 seconds to see if you'd like to get involved with that. It is no obligation, don't worry, we won't charge you. We won't charge you, don't worry. Okay, fantastic stuff. Thank you all ever so much again, and a huge thank you to Louise for attending this morning. Really enjoyed that. It's been absolutely fantastic. So thank you again, Louise. Really good stuff. Coming next week, we're on Tuesday start, 3 o'clock. Got a live QA with the absolutely fantastic Gary Barker. He's the CEO, easy for me to say, of Repeat and Forbes magazine columnist, talking about what's next for property. Really looking forward to that. I'll send out the link to that webinar on the follow-up email again. So again, a huge thanks, Louise. Fantastic stuff as always. All have yourself a lovely weekend. Enjoy yourselves, enjoy the sunshine, and I look forward to seeing you next week. You take care all. Thanks again, Louise. Take care.
Thank you. Thanks all.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.